Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of Recap, a PC gaming news podcast where I take a look at the week's announcements, news, and releases. Hopefully, this is the first of many, so thank you very much for joining me, and on with the show. DUELYST by Counterplay Games has now entered open beta and can be accessed via a client on their website at duelyst.com. And that is DUELYST with a Y. The game itself seems one part turn-based tactics and one part CCG, where users control a hero on a grid and then can summon new minions onto the battlefield or use spells and abilities to eventually overcome your enemy. The focus seems largely PvP, though there seem to be plenty of recommendations to play the tutorials if you're even somewhat interested, as they provide some entertaining puzzles by themselves. There's a little bit of controversy regarding this title, as it was originally a kickstarted game with the intention of being a buy-to-play game come release, and it's now switched to a free-to-play model. While that means you'll be able to jump into the game at no cost, it's understandable that some backers are unhappy at the change and have concerns over how it'd potentially impact the game, such as pacing and unlocking new cards. There is of course an upside, in that the game being free to play means potential for a larger player base, and as such, a greater pool of opponents. While I very much want to give this game a shot, I've read there are intentions to bring it to Steam in the future. While I'm unsure of the details, I'll be holding off playing for now, just in case I get invested in the game and am unable to link my game to Steam when it finally makes the transition. If that's not the sort of thing to put you off, it seems well worth having a look at. Overwatch, Blizzard Entertainment's upcoming hero-based competitive first-person shooter, has now entered into its closed beta for Europe and America. I wasn't lucky enough to get in at this stage myself, but Blizzard have mentioned that they'll be adding new players throughout the beta. If you've not yet signed up, you can still do so on Overwatch's website and have a chance of getting in during a later stage, while slightly decreasing my chances of doing so. Competition could be fierce for hero-based first-person shooters, what with Hi-Res's Paladins and Gearbox's Battleborn joining the fray as well. But as someone that loves a good first-person shooter and enjoys the variation of the hero playstyles, I'm very much looking forward to trying all of them, despite the knowledge that they all seem to have obnoxiously large weapons blocking half the screen. Hard West by Creative Forge Games has been given a new release date of November the 18th. Hard West itself is a turn-based strategy game along the lines of the last XCOM, taking place in the Wild West but mixing things up a bit with the addition of occult shenanigans such as rituals, cults, and the appearance of demons themselves. There are apparently 40 combat missions throughout the game's 8 story-based scenarios, with choice and consequence affecting outcomes and multiple endings, so while the game might not be quite so expansive as the previously mentioned XCOM, it certainly sounds like there shall be some replayability. The game will be available at £14.99, although is currently available at the cheaper price of £11.99 as a pre-order. Mirror's Edge Catalyst from DICE and EA has had a little bit of a stumble and now has a new release date of May the 24th. Catalyst looks to be a solid experience, building upon the original game's immersive free-running elements in almost every way, and the delay doesn't seem too bad as it distances the game from Deus Ex Mankind Divided's release date of February the 23rd. No Man's Sky, one of the most anticipated games at the moment, coming from UK-based developers Hello Games, has been given a release date of June 2016. It's a fair while off yet, and of course hasn't been locked down to a specific day, so I wouldn't even be surprised to see some movement as we get closer to the launch window. Oddly, as much as I'm looking forward to playing this game, I remain rather unhyped. A symptom, perhaps, of the last ambitious game I did get hyped for, being of course Spore. There are concerns about No Man's Sky regarding gameplay, as what we've seen mostly up to now being some basic planet-based and space-based combat, and we've been given some information regarding trading and crafting systems. But for me, it's all about the exploration. The chance to be the person exploring a virtual place for the first time, naming what I encounter and moving on to greater adventures really appeals. I just hope that the procedural generation can create enough variation to keep me heading deeper into the universe. Street Fighter V, the latest game in the series that I have been notoriously terrible at since feeding spare change into an arcade machine at a holiday camp, is scheduled to release on February the 16th of next year. A couple of interesting points about this release is that Capcom are bucking their trend of re-releasing the game in ever-increasingly crazy named enhanced editions, and is opting instead to provide players with a steady stream of downloadable content. While specifics haven't been given, it does also seem players will be able to earn a virtual currency as they play, giving them a way to potentially unlock said content without having to hand over any money. Being as bad as I am at Street Fighter, I might be giving this one a miss. It is a game I've always enjoyed seeing in action. I just wish I could get the same over-the-top action for a game I could play, such as a turn-based Japanese role-playing game, which I actually think would work really well. The Town of Light has been given a release date of February the 23rd, and is a game that has been likened to Gone Home, an immersive game that seeks to tell a story through interaction and presence. The Town of Light, however, isn't set in familiar settings, and instead takes place in a rundown asylum and seeks to tackle issues of mental illness. The game is heavily inspired by the psychiatric institutions of Italy from the 1900s and onwards, and seems to be focused on exploration and an unnerving experience, rather than jump scares and creatures that go bump in the night. I'm unsure what to expect from this one, and indeed wonder if it's a game I should even tackle come release. As someone who suffers from mental health issues, I do feel somewhat closer to the subject matter, and am aware that if I was born in another place and time not so long ago, the events that the game portrays could have very well applied to me. It seems to be a game that could fascinate me, and if the subject matter is treated with respect, could be something well worth experiencing. But I worry that my own situation and empathy could turn an otherwise interesting scenario into an incredibly daunting and draining experience. Hi-Res Studios are inviting everyone over to tribesuniverse.com to celebrate 20 years of the Tribes franchise. They've done this by providing downloads to some of the classic Tribes games, such as Earthsiege 1 and 2, Starsiege Tribes, Tribes 2 and Tribes Aerial Assault, Tribes Vengeance, and of course their own title, Tribes Ascend. Tribes 2 for me is one of my absolute favourite games of all time, and I'd be reluctant to return just for nostalgia's sake, but these are games that to me really haven't been surpassed. And interestingly, I have a copy of Tribes Vengeance still in its box on the shelf above me that I've never got around to playing, and the single player campaign is supposed to be quite good. So having access to that download is something I'm most likely going to do. Hi-Res themselves have only been personally responsible for the recent free-to-play game called Tribes Ascend, which came under a bit of flack because Hi-Res Studios was seen to have abandoned the game in favour of a new MOBA called Smite. And I had a ton of fun with Tribes Ascend myself, but interestingly, they have put a small team back onto the development of Tribes Ascend and are working on a patch at the moment to make things a bit better for people that are still interested in the game, which I think is excellent. So, all in all, I don't think you've got anything to lose, and you can check out some really great nostalgic games. One of the biggest stories of the last couple of weeks is that of Overkill's PayDay 2 adding microtransactions to their game. During the Crime Fest event, the game saw the addition of safes that for a small fee could be opened for a chance to receive new weapon skins, some of which boosted the weapon's stats. There are of course a handful of problems with that, not least of which paying for direct advantage in the game. But what perhaps irked the community the most was the game's developers previously stating the game wouldn't feature microtransactions at all. The game's producer has since reported the addition to the game is having the desired economic effect, even if it's come at the cost of fans' ire, and will not be removing them nor the stat bonuses that can be had. Though there is now a chance of receiving the drills used to open the safes as an in-game reward. I put many hours into PayDay 2 myself, but haven't played for a few months prior to this update. But it's worth noting that when I played the game, it received several paid downloadable packs that only needed to be bought if you wanted to receive some new items or host a new map. As I had a friend who bought the content, I didn't actually pay to play the new levels, which I thought was great, and a way to avoid splitting the community too much. But now, the problems surrounding the game seem to be snowballing. I think a standout comment was that the game is balanced around the vanilla experience, that is, the game without any DLC. That immediately says to me that people are now able to receive a direct and unbalanced advantage while playing the game, and for long-time players I think making the game easier is a far cry away from what they want. While I don't go looking for cheat tools, I do believe that the majority of the game's data is stored client-side and has allowed for trainers that can grant player levels, items, and in-game advantages such as endless ammo. And while the game is cooperative rather than competitive, people look down on others getting such an advantage, even if it's temporarily rewarding them. It's a shame. As a result of this, the game has thrown out all of the goodwill it once generated with its players, and has seen review scores plummet. And while it might be seeing financial success, it could very well hinder the sales of Overkill's next title. Maybe they can turn things around though. While the game doesn't seem to be in the top 10 concurrent user lists anymore, we could very well see stronger and more frequent updates in the future. No word has been given on if it will follow the usual payment models, but perhaps the addition of microtransactions would pave the way for free content available to all players, and that might just tempt even the most jaded of players back into the game. For me, PayDay 2 was, and still likely is, a great game, with some brilliant mechanics, satisfying shooting and rewarding gameplay. Let's hope that, like me trying to get all the gold out of the bank, only to walk into a dozer, that the developers don't get too greedy. Guild Wars 2 has had an expansion called the Heart of Thorns release, and that brings with it a new mastery system, a new jungle-like zone, additional specializations, a completely new profession, and the addition of guild halls and some newfangled PvP modes. But the reason I'm bringing this up is that the base Guild Wars 2 game has now gone completely free. There is no subscription whatsoever. The game is supported by service and cosmetic based microtransactions, but I don't think they really get in the way of the gameplay. Now, it's been a long time since I played Guild Wars. I played it initially at launch, but what was there was really compelling. It's a very good MMO. So if you're looking to spend many hours in a world you've never experienced before, absolutely recommend giving that a shot. A little bit of an odd one now. QUAKE Live, id Software's arena first-person shooter that was once playable in your browser for absolutely no pennies, has now switched to become a buy-to-play game. QUAKE Live, based on Quake 3, had been free to play for the last 5 years, I do believe, and offered an optional subscription service to players. The game came to Steam around a year ago, and this latest switch includes full Steam integration such as workshop support and achievements, but is now the only way you can continue playing the game. In a positive step, anyone who had previously installed Quake Live on Steam now gets access to the game without having to pay the entrance fee. But for long-time players, it has come at a cost. All of their accumulated stats have been reset. And that has got to sting. Now, while I agree stats aren't the most important thing in the world, they do represent time, commitment, achievement, and something to look back on fondly. And while there are those of us out there who would perhaps welcome a reset to our kill-death ratio in games, for those out there that not only liked having that record, but in fact paid money for the service, it just seems bad form that they weren't transitioned over or that players weren't reimbursed in some way. Batman Arkham Knight has returned to Steam since it was removed during its disastrous launch, where the game was largely unplayable for a great many users. While the game has improved, there are still issues forcing players to restart during extended play, and a pretty hefty recommendation that Windows 10 users have at least 12 GB of RAM. All in all, it makes you wonder just why they've re-released it now. It's obvious there are still wrinkles to smooth out, and of course, the hope is that they continue to make improvements over the coming weeks. But that begs the question as to why they simply didn't wait just that little bit longer to ensure the best user experience. Chaos Reborn, the latest game from the designer of the original XCOM game, is now available on Steam for £14.99. Chaos Reborn is a turn-based tactical game pitting your wizard and his deck of minions and spells against up to 3 other opponents in tense, strategic-based combat across hex-based environments. I've not given the game a try yet, but will certainly do so earlier rather than later, as I'm slightly concerned the player base could stagnate. But it's worth noting that the game has been well received with its combination of position-based gameplay and random number generation. The RNG is worth noting, as if you're the type of person that gets infuriated when you miss a 95% chance to hit in a game like the new XCOM, you could certainly find yourself in similar situations in this game, where sometimes success or failure can simply be a matter of luck. While the game dropped the minimalistic art style it showed during the Kickstarter campaign, it looks absolutely beautiful. Certainly capturing the essence of the original game from 1985, but bringing it bang up to date. The expansion to the wonderfully dark and twisted top-down roguelike shooter Binding of Isaac Rebirth has released on Steam for £7.99, titled The Binding of Isaac Afterbirth. You can once again delve into the dark depths of Isaac's basement to face all manner of horrors, including over 100 new enemies, and reminding me of my bunnies, entire rooms filled with poop. The expansion boasts over 100 hours of additional gameplay, including a new game mode, a lengthier main game, daily runs, over 1,000 new room designs, 120 questionable items, and a great deal more. COLORTONE seems to be a first-person puzzle platform game with a lovely sedate art style that challenges the player with escaping a series of rooms by manipulating some physics items, colour matching, and performing some first-person platforming. The game is priced at £3.99 and has a 10% saving until the 5th of November. There's no word on length, but it seems nicely priced, and I'm quite the fan of games where I am initially perplexed by what's in front of me, and then get those little eureka moments as things start to make sense. Divinity Original Sin Enhanced Edition is now available for £29.99 on Steam. Larian's latest RPG has seen a lot of love, gaining great support for its successful Kickstarter, well-received reviews from the press and public, and they took it upon themselves to return the love with a series of improvements for their Enhanced Edition. That was actually provided for free to those that previously bought the game. As well as a series of balance changes, the game is now fully voice acted, has reworked some of its story elements, and added plenty of additional content such as enemies, puzzles, skills, and weapons. I did back the Kickstarter myself back in the day, which did things a little bit differently by stating the funds would be used for polish. So for the team to then put more effort into the game post-release is, to me, absolutely excellent. Now, I gave the original release a try at launch and was rather impressed, except I did manage to accidentally kill a dog by throwing a corpse at it. Yeah. So, I certainly look forward to returning, especially now I just have to find the time to play it. The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky second chapter is now out, priced at £22.99. The sequel to the well-received Trails in the Sky, this story-driven game features traditional turn-based JRPG gameplay, some good art, and is hoping to clock in at around 70 hours worth of gameplay. To coincide with the launch, the original Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky game is available for half price at £6.49 until the 5th of November. While I've not given it a try myself, it's reviewed very favourably by the Steam community and has been on my wishlist for a while. PATHOLOGIC Classic HD is available on Steam for £9.99 and is a touched-up version of the critically acclaimed Russian psychological horror survival first-person game. The script has been reworked in an attempt to make it more accessible throughout its 70-plus hour gameplay that takes place in a plague-stricken town over 3 playable characters. It's apparently not a game that holds your hand, and while plot-driven, you're free to wander about interacting with the world as you attempt to survive, whether that be chatting with the locals or stealing their last remaining items of food. While the game has received a fresh coat of paint, it isn't a technical showcase, but does have a great atmosphere and a rather interesting art style. It seems like an interesting game that often appears on the best games you've never played lists, so perhaps now is your chance. GALAK-Z, the highly praised 2D space shooter, has made its way from the PS4 to the PC and is available now for £11.99 or £14.99 from the 5th of November. Featuring an art style reminiscent of 80s anime, the game boasts smart AI, physics-driven combat, and procedurally generated levels. The game was well received and looks like explosive fun with a high skill ceiling. It's worth noting that apparently the game gets quite difficult, and the PC release sees the addition of an arcade mode, allowing you to replay failed missions without losing your save games. I was pretty much sold by watching the missile swarms in the trailer. While it might be a while before I get my hands on it, this is way up on my personal wishlist. And that sums up this week's recap. Thank you very much for your time. I hope to do this again. Take care.